Everyone, kindly open your cameras. Okay, class managers, kindly check your attendance.
Sure, the boys are already complete.
Okay, the girls.
Teacher Rayville is not yet here.
Oh, she's not yet. Okay, so I think Raven and is Bernadette here? Ah, you're here. Just okay, so probably later she'll enter. Okay, so first everyone, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, teacher.
Okay, and for today, we're just going to continue on our last topic, okay, which is the iteration and loop statements. Okay, so I think that this is going to be our last discussion for the fourth quarter. Basically, most probably your in our school year. Okay, so discussion and then next meetings are going to be for review tests and other preparations for your moving up. Okay, so I think you're going to have an advanced schedule in terms of summative exam, correct? There. And okay, reminders for those who are going to submit their activities late. Okay, so there's a set date in your LMS in terms of your activities where that is up till when you can pass. Okay, so if ever that you didn't get to pass the set date, so just pass it on the via the comments. Okay, so just proceed there so that I won't have to open the LMS because actually every time that I am opening, okay, so it keeps getting closed. Okay, so just post your activities if ever it is late in the comments. Okay, so as much as possible, everyone, even if it is late, so still pass it. So the important thing there is you are passing your activities. Okay, so is that clear? Okay, and with that, so let's continue on our discussion. And also, who can screen share their Visual Studio? So, okay, so Gian. Okay, so let's continue. So lesson 3, our last lesson for our school year. Okay, so iteration and looping statement. Okay, so last time we already get an introduction or introductory discussion regarding our iteration and looping statements. Okay, so in here again, we are going to, to define the iteration and looping structure, enumerate the types of loops in Visual Basic, follow the loop control structures and reserve words, and of course, create VB form designs with appropriate set of codes. Okay, so but first, again, so let's review this one. So loopings are compared to our flowcharts. So it has a particular structure that it is similar to or behaves the same. So again, what is the name of this structure? Yes, Aaron.
Here it is repetition. That's all.
Okay, so the name of our structure is the repetition structure. Okay, so from the name itself, it is performing particular procedures over and over in repetition. Okay, and then in this structure on the first part, so what is the name of that first part? Yes, John C.
Teacher, it's called the initialization.
Okay, so the first part is the initialization. So we call this as the initialization because first, our variable in the beginning, it doesn't have any value to it. Okay, so we just declared it as a variable. Okay, so in order for it to have a value, so it should go inside or it should go through the sorry. Okay, so it should go through the process of initialization. Okay, so in initialization, whatever value it is, once it is assigned to a variable, so the start of the program, it will be the first value of or the default value of our variable. And from then on, in order for that value to change or that initial value to change, it will go through the next part. So what is it called? Yes, Bautista. Okay, so it will go through the process of increment or decrement. Okay, so this highly depends on the situation actually. So in order for the variable to change, okay, it will depend entirely in here. So if the initial value is a low value, okay, so ranging from 1 to 10 like that. So in order to change the value of our variable to meet the condition, so it should either increment or decrement. Okay, so in other words, this is the process of changing the value of our variable. Okay, so in the increment or decrement. Okay, so if increment, it will add, or decrement, it will decrease. Okay, and then to check if our variable meets the condition, it will go through the third process, which is, yes, Rina?
Teacher, it is the decision. That's all.
Okay, so this one is decision. Okay, so in decision, it is looking at our variable if it meets a certain condition. So every time that it is not, so it just keeps going back, change its value, and then check. If still not, go back, change the value, then check. Okay, so that is the whole process of our loop. Okay, so the only thing that is not repeating here, or that's the process is not repeating over and over, is the initialization, because in initialization it just gives the starting value of our variable. So it doesn't have to initialize over and over again what is the value of our variable going to be. Okay. And then of course, there is this term, which it says here that it is often needed to write code that does a job repeatedly until a certain condition is met. So what is it pertaining to? Yes, Camila.
Teacher, it's pertaining to looping statement. That's all.
Okay, so this one pertains to looping. Okay, so looping, it is repeating a process over and over until a condition is met. Okay, so Visual Basic allows a procedure to run repetitively as many times as long as the processor and the memory could support. Okay, so if ever you're using a high-end computer, so you can perform tons of looping. Okay, but if you're using a low-end computer, okay, it has a very low RAM or processor, okay, so it can just perform at a certain extent. Okay, and next to that is our iteration and looping statement. Okay, so we have two terms here, iteration and looping. So what is the difference between the two? Yes, Raven.
Teacher, for iteration, it is the repetition of a process or procedure multiple times. While for looping statement, it's the same as iteration, but until it meets a certain condition. That's all, teacher.
Okay, very good. So for the iteration, it is the whole concept of repeating a process. Okay, so if ever a process is being repeated multiple times, so that is called an iteration. For the looping, so we can consider iteration as a part of looping. Okay, because inside looping there is the event of an iteration where a process is repeating multiple times. Instead, in looping, there is a certain condition being met. Okay, so there is a limit. Okay, so in looping, it will perform an iteration until the condition or the desired outcome is met. Okay, for the iteration, it is just the process of repeating a procedure over and over. Okay, and for the looping, so we have three types of looping, which I said last time. So the first is what? Okay, so the first looping is, yes, Richie.
For the first is for next loop.
Okay, so the first one is the for next loop. The second one, yes, Bernadette.
The do loop. That's all.
Okay, so next one is we have the do loop, and then the third one, yes, Faith.
Teacher, it is while and while loop.
Okay, so it is while and while loop. Okay, so for next loop, do loop, and while loop. So again, iteration, when the same procedure is repeated multiple times, so that is an iteration. So for the looping, so it is the process of repeating a procedure over and over until a defined condition is met. Okay, so an iteration, it is existing inside the looping. Okay, so and again, we have three types of loops. So for next loop, do loop, and while loop. Okay, so let's have first again our for next loop. So which we had an activity last time. Okay, so for the for next loop, this is the most common loop in Visual Basic. So it is used to repeatedly execute a sequence of code or block of code until a given condition is satisfied. Okay, so for the for next loop, it is the most common one, meaning it is the most used loop. Okay, so why? Because okay, from if earlier we had our three parts of the repetition structure or for the loop. So we have the initialization, we have the decrement or increment, and then the decision. So in here, which one will you consider in here in our code is the initialization? Yes, Gabriel.
Sure, it's dim counter as integer. That's all.
Mhm. Okay, so again, the initialization, it is the process of providing our variable with its initial value. Okay, so in dim, we are just declaring a variable. So in our flowchart, it is the same as in the, I think the process symbol, or no, the input symbol. So in the input symbol, we are just inputting there the variable, meaning we declared a variable. So we're trying to find the initialization as to the variable is getting an initial value. Yes, Denzel.
Teacher, counter equals 1.
Okay, there. So the initialization is counter equals 1, where the counter will start with 1. Okay? And then for our increment and decrement, so in this process, in this code, so where is it going to be positioned? Okay, the condition first. Okay, so let's see the condition first. In this code, where is the condition? Yes, Nathan?
I think it's the dim counter as integer. That's all.
Hmm? Again, this one, the dim counter, it's just declaring what variable are we going to use. Okay. So there, I almost forgot the dim counter as integer. So it's important to declare it as an integer since the variable counter will perform arithmetic operations in order to change its value. Just a moment. Okay, sorry for that. Okay, again, so the integer or the counter should be an integer since it is going to perform arithmetic arithmetic operations in order to change its value. Okay, now for the condition. The condition is actually this one. Okay, so 10. That is the limit to our loop. Okay, so that is going to be considered as the condition. Now for the increment and decrement, so the reason why this is the most the common flowchart loop that is being used is because it has an automatic increment and decrement being performed here. Okay, so the statement 1 to 10. So even though it is a part of an initialization and the condition, there is an automatic incrementing here that is happening inside 1 to 10. So meaning it will perform an increment of 1 from 1 to 10. Okay, so 10 being the limit or the condition. And so it will repeat over and over until it comes to 10. Is that clear? Okay, so for what I remember, you already done this exercise, correct? Or this activity. So Gian, kindly share the activity number 38. Okay, so let's take a look at the code first. Okay, there. So counter as integer for the counter is equals to 1 to 10. So it will repeat the process 10 times. So in the list box, that items that add, it will display the value of counter. So if previously in the our introduction to the list box and combo box, so once we add an item and then inside the parentheses we are putting the string, so that is what will display, correct? So in here, since we put the variable instead of a string, so the variable or the value of that variable is the one that is going to display. Okay. So, but if we change it into a string, so try and put quotations inside the parentheses. Just erase the first. Okay, just rewrite it.
Teacher, wait, it's not working.
There. Okay, there. And okay, run that. And there. So instead of the value of the variable displaying, so it's just displaying the string. Okay, so you can use this actually if you want to display certain outputs or strings or words multiple times. Okay, so it's possible to display multiple strings inside the loop. Okay, so close that and convert it back as the variable. Okay, there. So since it is already the variable, what it will display is the current value of our variable all throughout the process of the loop. So first process of the loop, its value is 1. Then second process of the loop. So already, so initial value is 1. So it says here, print or add 1. So it is this one. And then it repeated since it is not yet 10. So it repeated What's next to 1? That is 2. And then print. So that's 2. So it's not yet 10. So it goes back again. Counter. What's next to 2? That is 3. So it will print 3. Then so on until it meets 10. Okay. So is that clear? Everyone? Questions? None? Okay, so you may stop share. Thank you. Okay, so hopefully everyone understands this perfectly. Okay, and so for the activity 39, so you're just going to provide it with a different initial value. So in here, if it says 1 as its initial value, so you just have to change it to -10. Okay, now for the other syntax, which is containing the step function. Okay, so it's still the for loop, but with step. Okay, so for, then the variable start number to end number, and then step, increment or decrement, and then the process of displaying. Okay, so in this example now, okay, so you already know which one is the initialization, right? So which one is the initialization? Yes, Mary Sophia.
It is the counter equals 0.
Okay, so this one is our initialization. Then our condition is yes, JE.
Sure, it is the 10.
10.
The step 10 result true.
Our condition. Really? Okay. Yes, Benedict.
It is the 100. That's all.
Okay, so still this one. Because 0 to 100, okay, so 100 being the condition where okay, 100 being the condition or the limit of our loop. Okay, so in this case, which one is our increment or decrement? Yes, Leonard.
Sure, the increment is 10. That's all.
Okay, there. So now we have our correct increment. Okay, so the increment or decrement, it is the step 10 or any value in this matter. Okay, so in this part, this is where we can actually see that we are incrementing or decrementing some values, because in this procedure, it happens automatically by ones. Okay, so one value only in terms of increment or decrement. But once we add this step, so we can have the option of incrementing or skipping, in this case, skipping 2 counts or 10 counts for the next value. Okay, so step 10, that is what we incremented for the next value. So step 10, so 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. Okay, so that is the one incrementing. Okay, so is that clear? So every time that we have step 10, so we are skipping some counts or incrementing the said value. Okay, so is that clear? Questions? None. Okay, and then for our 41, so it's just we made our initial value as negative 100. Okay, so but in this case, in this code, since we have the step, so what are we going to use as a value to count from 1,000 to 10? And what we are skipping or decrementing by 10. So we're decrementing by 10. So what is going to be the value of step? Again, we are decrementing. Yes, Althea.
Teacher, I think it would be negative 10.
Okay, so since it is decrementing, it is going to be negative 10. So since we have the initial value of 1,000, so negative 10, that is going to be 990, negative 10, 980, so on. Okay, so that is going to be what will happen here. Okay, and then next we have is the do loop. Okay, so in the do loop, this structure repeats the enclosed blocks of statement while a Boolean condition is true or until the condition is met. Okay, so in here in our syntax, so do while the condition is true. Okay, so because it says here while the Boolean condition is true. Okay, so as long as the condition here is true, it will perform the VB statement. Okay, and then it will loop back as long as it is true. Okay, so what is our example? Okay, so this one is already for activity 42. Okay, so name 42. This is going to be your activity in the LMS later. Okay, so in here, it says here that the example will keep adding until the counter is equal to 1,000. Okay, so let's look here. So it says in the definition, it will perform the loop or perform the procedure while the condition is true. Okay, so it will do this while the condition is true. So the counter, okay, so in here, which one is our initialization first? Yes, Gian.
Teacher, it will be counter equals 10.
Okay, so this one is our initialization. Which one is our condition? I just said this. Yes, Aaron.
Teacher, it will be 1,000.
The condition is the whole statement of counter is less than or equal to 1,000. Okay, and which one is the increment or decrement? It's there already. Yes, Faith.
Teacher, is it counter plus equals 1?
Okay, there. So it is the counter plus equals 1. Okay, so we may have already encountered this symbol in our checkboxes, correct? So every time this one we are using in that time. So we are using this as we are going to add a certain value to the total sum. Okay, but in this case, it is being used as an increment inside a loop. Okay, so do not get confused in this one. So in the do while loop, we're using this as an increment. Okay, so we already have the initialization, the increment, and the condition. Okay, so let's break down the construction of this code. Okay, so again, we are going to do this. Okay, so again, in every loop, there should be a procedure to be repeated over and over. Okay, so that should not be missing when you're going to loop. So in this case, the procedure is list box items. Okay, so this is an output which will repeat 10 times. Okay, so there should be a procedure or an output that should be repeated whenever there is a loop. Okay, so do this procedure while the counter is in a true Boolean value. Okay, so the counter, so initialization, it is 10. So is the counter less than or equal to 100? So that is true. So it is less than 1,000 rather. So it is less than 1,000. Okay, so in the definition earlier, it says it will perform the whole process repeatedly as long as the condition in the loop is true. Okay, so counter less than or equal to 1,000, that is still true. So it will perform this and it will loop over and over until the condition is no longer true, otherwise false. Other words, it is false. Okay, so that is the do while loop. Okay, so if you're looking at our condition, it will perform the procedure. So it will list or it will display the value of the counter. So the value is 10. It will add 1, that is 11. So it will loop. And then, is it still in the condition? So 11 is still less than 1,000. So print again and then plus 1. So that's 12. Go back. Condition 12 less than 1,000, still true. So display plus 1, 13, and so on. Okay. So that is the process of the do while. Okay, so take note of the code. So you may print screen or copy. Okay, so let me just demonstrate the code. Okay, so our variable is counter. Counter is 10. So counter is less than or equal to 1,000. So is box 1. There. Okay, there. So the condition is first our initialization, the first value is 10. So in the condition, as long as it is true, so it will repeat until we reach 1,000. Okay, so why 1,000? Because in the condition, it says there, less than or equal to 1,000. So is 1,000 still equal to 1,000? Yes. Okay, so that's why it's still displayed the last value, which is 1,000. So the next process in that is counter plus 1. So that's already 1,001. So looking back to our condition, so 1,001 is greater than, is less than or equal to 1,000. So that is already false. So that is when our loop will stop. Okay, so is that clear? Okay, so again, so that is the do loop. Okay, so don't get confused. This is not yet the while loop. Okay, so do. This is do loop. Okay, and then for your name for activity 43. So this is going to be your output. So the number will keep decreasing until the counter is equal to 10. So until it is equal to 10. Okay, so your initial value here is 1,000. Okay, I will not provide you the code. So you will just have to derive it from here. Okay, so next. So take a screenshot of this one so that you know the output. Okay, so that is activity number 43. Whoops. Okay, next one. So for your name 44, there is another syntax. So this is still a do loop. Okay, so what happened here is the condition is transferred at the bottom. Okay, so the first example can be written as another type of do loop. So in this example, so we have loop until. Okay, so if earlier we it says loop or do while. Okay, so do the process while the condition is true. So in here, do the process and loop until the counter is greater than 1,000. Okay, so you may be wondering, so teacher, I think this is false. So why is it still going to loop? Okay, so look at the construction of the code. So do our procedure or output and loop it until we get a value of, or until the counter is greater than 1,000. Okay, so it says until. So until the counter is no longer is until the counter is greater than 1000 already. So that is when it will stop. Okay, so is it a true value or false? Okay, so let's carefully look at this. So it will loop until the counter is greater than 1000. So is the counter greater than 1000 here? So it is not. So that is why it will keep looping back. Wait. Okay, no. So in this case, so we use the while here. So in there, that is, so earlier the description was until a certain condition is met. So the true value that it is pertaining is being the while. Okay. So in the while, as long as the value is being true, so that is when we can, that is when the loop will continue over and over. And then there's actually another syntax using an until. Okay, so in the until, so the condition here is different already. It is not giving off a true value. So in this case, the counter is still lower than 1000. So that is false actually. Okay, so it will loop back until we get a counter which is true. So until we get the counter greater than 1000. Okay, so is that clear? Are there any confusions? Is everyone confused here? Not? Okay. So I'm glad you're getting this. Okay, so I'm just in this case, we just transferred the condition in here instead of in here. And then we used until instead of while. Okay, take note of the code. Okay, so you can just screenshot this one. Then let's do it in our Visual Studio. Okay, so we're still using 10. Okay, so instead of while, we'll transfer it to the bottom and use until. Until counter is greater than 1000. Okay, so it will do the loop, do this one. So the first thing that's going to happen is it will display the value of the variable. After displaying, it will add 1 and then look at the condition. So once it look at the condition, it will go back here. And then display again, increment, then condition. Okay, so once I run this, so there. So from 10 to 1000. Okay, so is that clear? Hopefully everyone is getting this, okay? So again, this is our code. You may just follow that or this one. Okay, next for name 45. So you'll just reverse it, okay? So starting from 1000, it will decrease until you reach 10. Okay, so same goes for this one. So you'll just derive the code from here. But in this case, it will start from 1,000 and then the condition is until 10. Okay, next. Oops. Okay, and then for your last loop is the while and while loop. Okay, so this structure repeatedly executes a program code while a given condition remains true. Okay, so if earlier it is the do loop performs the loop as long as the condition is true or until we meet a certain condition. So in this loop, the while and while loop, so it will perform the loop as long as the condition remains true. Okay, so the syntax is while, the condition, the statement or the display, and then end while. Okay, so now for name 36, 46 rather. So the example displays the value of n, the first column, and the sum of the number and the values. Okay, don't read this. You'll mess up your brain. Okay. Don't pay attention first on this part. Okay, so let me explain to you first what's going on in this loop. Okay, so while condition is true, so as long as n is not equal to 1,000, it will perform this and this. And then, so in here already, it determined already how many times it will loop back. Okay, so in here, so n, as long as n is not equal to 10, it will keep on incrementing and keep on displaying this output. Okay, and then once this condition is met, it will end while. Okay, so that is the concept of this loop. Okay, so while n is not equal to 1,000, which is true, so it will keep on performing this and this procedure until this condition is no longer true. Okay, now for what is displayed here for your name 46. Okay, so in here we're going to declare two variables, sum and n. Okay, so in the loop, actually there is no initialization, meaning from the start the value of n and sum are both 0. Okay, so the initialization process happened in the incrementing process. Okay, so once you incremented 1, so that's already the initial value of our variables. Okay, so what happened here is in n, so since the value of n is 0, it incremented 1. Okay, so this happened first. These two processes here happened first before the display of the list box, meaning it added first the value before it displayed. Because if the process is the other way around, so this box, we display already the value of n and sum, okay, without any value in it. So that means there's no value for the first first display of the n and sum. Okay, so again, the positioning of our increment and decrement and also the display is important for the logic of our code. Okay, so what happens here again? the n and sum both have 0. But they already added 1. So n plus 1. So that is 1. Sum is equals to 0. But sum is equals to sum plus n. The value of n here is 1 already. So plus 1. So that's 1. So and then display. That is why 1 and 1 is here. Okay. Then we look back. So n is still not equal to 100. So perform it again. So now the initial value of n is 1 plus 1. So that's 2. The value now of n is 2 plus the sum plus 1. So that's 3. So 2 plus 3. So 2 plus 1. So that's 3. Okay, there. Okay, so the same process again. Okay, looping back until you get to 100 in the end. Okay, now for the dual display. No, the 2 columns of display. Okay, so in the parentheses, so if earlier I told you you can put string or the variable. So in here we had 2 variables, or we have 2 variables. So we have the first variable here, n. We're just going to combine it using ampersand. And then the VB tab here is the VB version of, or the tab function of VB. That's why there is a big space here. So VB tab and then ampersand again to combine the second variable. Okay, so that is how we are displaying multiple variables in our list box. Okay, so n ampersand VB tab ampersand sum. Okay, so is that clear? Okay, so let me just display this one. Okay, what we'll do is sum n. And then again, we do not have initial value. So straight to the loop. So while n is not equal to 1000 or 100, so we're gonna have n 1 sum is equal to sum plus n. Then this box n ampersand VB tab ampersand sum. Okay, so once I run this, it will display the same output. There, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 1, 3, 6, 10, 15, 21 there. So same output as earlier. Okay, now I'm wondering what would happen if we switch this here. There, so you can see the initial value or the first value is 0. Why? Because we displayed already the value of n and sum without having incrementing or without assigning a value or incrementing a value inside them. So initially, their values are 0. Okay, compared to this one, so we incremented already before we display. That's why the output is 1. Okay, so is that clear? And then for your last activity for this school year, name 47. Don't read this. Okay, so what will display here is 3 columns of the output. So these two still the same as the earlier one. You'll just have to display a third column. So the third column is M. Okay, so you're going to use 3 variables, N, sum, and M. Whereas M, it will from its previous value, you will add sum to M. Okay, so that's the clue there already. And then in terms for the display, again, just refer to the previous example here. So how are you going to add another variable depending from what is provided here? Okay, are there any questions? None? Okay, so that would be all for today, everyone. So that would be our last discussion for this school year, discussion of the topic this school year. Okay, so next meetings would be review tests already. And who here is participating in the PISA? Okay, so those who are going to be preparing for the PISA, okay, so if ever that you're going to do your activity, prioritize first the PISA, and I'll give you consideration in passing the activity, if ever, okay? So that would be all for today, everyone. See you.
Yeah, thank you, teacher.
Thank you, teacher.
Okay, goodbye.